Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this very important webinar. It is quite unusual for us to do something like this outside of our normal communication procedures and channels, but we just think that this information is really important. And so we wanted to spend some time with you all today to offer this information to you. I apologize. I am in my car this morning and not in my office, so bear with me, but I'm out visiting schools today, one of my favorite places to be. So you'll have to just hear me from my car. Look, the purpose of our visit today is to provide you additional information on how we can support our literacy work in the state of Louisiana during this upcoming year. We have done a really good job as a state over the last couple of years of enduring through a global pandemic and storms and other issues. But now is the time for us to continue to move forward. And so at this point, I am going to turn this over to Dr. Jenna Chasson on our team.
Thank you, Dr. Brumley. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are so thrilled to have you all on this morning for our very special Supporting Reading Foundations in Upper Elementary webinar. And we are just hoping that today you leave inspired and empowered to serve your upper elementary students in their reading foundation skills. So it is our vision that every child can reach their potential, no matter where they're from, how much money their family makes, or where they live. Beyond merely believing this, we are driven by a mission centered on getting the best outcomes for all kids who call the great state of Louisiana their home. Our vision for Louisiana students is ambitious and attainable, and you see here on this slide, our 6 critical goals outline a student's successful progression from birth through graduation. There are several key things that we know must be true to position students for success along the educational journey. Those things include access to high-quality childcare experiences, teachers who are prepared to lead a classroom every single day, daily instruction that accelerates learning, and a meaningful high school experience. Another one of those key areas we have called out as a department is foundational literacy instruction, the topic that we are going to dig deeply into today. Every fall, we as a department receive a small snapshot of student literacy performance through our annual literacy screener administration in the first 30 days of each school year. On the next slide, you all will see our fall reading report data. You'll see overall, over 50% of our students scored below benchmark on last year's fall reading report data. Zooming in here on our 3rd graders, we see that only 53.2% of our 3rd grade students last year scored at benchmark. We also know that in our spring 2022 ELA LEAP data, only 38% of our 3rd grade students scored proficient and above. This really has driven the need for our work in 3rd grade on up in foundational literacy skills. One of the ways that we as a department, as well as stakeholders across our state and nation, are able to get a sense of how our students are doing in literacy is with the NAEP assessment. This slide provides an overview of Louisiana's scaled score over time on that NAEP assessment. You can see that our results have typically ranged from 55% to 63% of Louisiana 4th graders scoring basic or above, with some variations over time. We know that we have a responsibility to Louisiana students to support their literacy instruction across their educational journey. And we know that those early grades provide an opportunity to explicitly teach literacy skills. And today we will talk about supporting our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students in particular in continuing those literacy foundational skills. We have set an ambitious literacy goal as a state around our 4th grade reading NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, in order to ground our literacy improvement plan in data so that we can best understand the impact of our robust literacy improvement activities. We have set this clear, long-term, and quantifiable goal. Our goal is by 2027, Louisiana's 4th grade NAEP results will increase by 10 points in scaled score in comparison to the 2019 results. This would place Louisiana as a state above the national average in 4th grade reading performance. If rankings remain steady, this would place us in the 20s in ranking. We know that we are engaging in all of the right literacy improvement work across the state, and we know our educators are really feeling excited about our literacy improvement work. And so today we are just so excited to show you all, in particular, some really special new resources that we have to support those 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students who we know are our children who really lost a significant amount of instructional time due to the pandemic over the last several years and still need a lot of that strong, explicit, systematic literacy instruction over the next several years. And we are thrilled to be able to share with you all the resources to help you do just that. I will next turn it over to Shanna Bieber, our Executive Director of Literacy here at the Department of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Chasson. Good morning. I'm excited to be here with you this morning as we introduce these 2 new literacy resources that will improve our literacy outcomes across the state. So we always like to start off with our mission that Louisiana students will have improved literacy outcomes through high quality instruction and interactions from an effective teacher who is supported by leaders and families. Our state's comprehensive literacy plan is focused around these 4 pillars: setting and monitoring literacy goals, providing high quality core instruction together with interventions and extensions, engaging leaders and teachers in professional growth, and including families in their children's literacy development at all ages and stages. Today, we will mainly focus on the high quality core instruction with interventions and extensions pillar. One of the resources will focus on core instruction for all 3rd through 5th graders in those foundational skills. And the other resource will focus on foundational skills interventions that can be used for anyone beyond grade 2. So as leaders, we are change agents, and the decisions we make impact student outcomes. So therefore, we must make sure that our decisions are grounded in the science of reading and provide a conducive environment based on how students best learn how to read. Science of reading is not just a buzzword. It's a culmination of years of research that explains why structured literacy is crucial. And this is why our Act 108 literacy training is so important. So the training will take all K-3 teachers and leaders through those literacy best practices, and it will also help you as leaders inform your decisions around those literacy practices, such as why we should no longer use DRAs or other balanced literacy materials such as Fontes and Pinnell. Or how do we ensure that we have enough time in our literacy block schedules to include time for core instruction in both foundational skills as well as knowledge building. So before I pass it over to Sarah to share these great new resources, I'd like to offer support from the department's literacy team. I have the best literacy team around, and they're anxiously waiting for your invites and requests for supports and visits. And again, I want to thank you for joining us this morning and for ensuring that all Louisiana teachers and students get the support they need to increase our literacy rates. After all, we know they deserve our very best. So at this time, I will pass it over to Sarah Stolman, who is the main show, and to share with you these new resources.
Hi, before I begin, Dr. Chasson has asked if I could give Dr. Brumley a few more moments to speak.
Hey, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for turning it back over to me. Earlier, someone had mentioned that they could not hear me, so I just went ahead and turned it over to Dr. Chasson. But what I wanted to share with everyone is at the beginning of this school year, very beginning, when test data came out, one of the areas of concern was last year's third graders, which are this year's fourth graders. And so these are the children that I have been most concerned about for a couple of years, because this year's fourth graders were first graders when their year was cut short in the spring of 2020, which is a foundational year. This year's third graders were kindergartners in that year. So we cannot approach this year's third graders and this year's fourth graders in the same way that we have historically worked with these children. Our work with this year's third graders and fourth graders, as well as those younger children, is just so important, not just for proficiency rates immediately, but we know that if these children aren't reading on grade level as soon as they possibly can, and we know that there is a timeline for when that is easier to do, like we know that this is going to be a problem for these children for the rest of their lives. And so I just wanted to take a moment and just encourage everyone to be deliberate, to be laser focused, thinking about these children, and not just what your work with them means for them over the next year or two, but what the impact of your work will have on them for their lifetime. And then what that impact would be if we don't do this work well over this next year with this group of children. So what we wanted to do is be able to put some really strong resources and supports in your hands so that you would have them, so that you could approach this work. At the beginning of the year, we held a webinar with system level leaders, superintendents, and I made a sticky note. And on that sticky note, it says, and it's on my desk, and it says, our third and fourth graders will recover. And this webinar and this work for me is about doing my part to make sure that our third and fourth graders this year and those other students in surrounding grades, both up and down, do recover. But we can't do that without you. And we need your support to help make sure that every child in the state of Louisiana recovers and then accelerates moving forward so that we can get the outcomes that we know our kids need and deserve. So, Sarah, thank you for giving me just a couple of additional moments to make some comments. And I just look forward to working alongside everyone over the course of the year as we are laser focused on this group of children. So thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. I am so excited to be here today to share these resources with you. I'd like to set a little context, though. As a member of our literacy PD team, we've traveled across the state over the past year and a half, and the questions that we consistently get are, what happens when they show up in third grade and they can't read? And so we would hear it again and again, and we would say, okay, they're showing up in third grade and they can't read. What do we do? We dug into the data, and as Dr. Chasson showed at the beginning of the presentation, we realized that nearly 50% of our students in Louisiana are really entering third grade without the skills that they need to really meaningfully grapple with the content of their ELA instruction. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that when we think about reading instruction, it's very important that we understand that, there are many different components to a truly robust ELA program, right? On the one hand, we have to work to build their decoding skills, their word recognition skills, their ability to look at a word, to make sense of that word, and to read it fluently. And we also have to build their language comprehension. The product of these two things leads to strong reading comprehension. Now, typically what's happened is that in grades K through 2, we provide a lot of instruction in word recognition and found what we might call foundational skills. And we also provide instruction in language comprehension. But as our students have moved to third grade, we kind of wean them off of the foundational skills instruction. And so most of our high quality curricula that we use in third grade and beyond at this point focus on the language comprehension side, right? Our students are reading, they're trying to make sense of what they read. But what we're finding and what our teachers are telling us across the state is that the students are still struggling in that foundational skills piece. They still need that support with decoding, with word recognition, and our data is supporting that. We see that our students really don't have the skills that they need to read, and we need to provide that with them if they're going to be able to make sense of what they read, and if we're going to be able to see that growth that we hope we can see. Good. Okay, so in order to address this need, we've developed two very interesting and important resources. The first of these resources is to address that core instruction piece. This resource is designed for all students in grades 3 through 5, and we call this the Foundational Instruction for Reading Excellence Program, the FIRE kit. These FIRE lessons provide a systematic, explicit reading foundations program for all students in grades 3 through 5. These are not just students who are struggling or who need additional support with skills that they should have mastered in grades K through 2. These resources are for all students and will benefit their reading, their decoding skills, and ultimately their reading comprehension. This program is comprised of 3 units, each with 40 10-minute lessons that include 2 skills checkpoints that assess the students on the skills targeted in that unit. Now, by design, these lessons are very short. Each lesson is very narrowly focused and targeted to a very specific skill. So they're designed to be quick and impactful power lessons, is what we're calling them, really to provide students with what they need in the areas that we are discussing in these foundational skills areas. The checkpoints are designed to be kind of fun opportunities for ways for teachers to assess students, not in a traditional format, but more in a way that allows teachers to see if the students are applying the skills that they've learned through fun activities, games like bingo or shared writing activities. But there's plenty of information within the unit that will explain to the teacher how they can use this activity to assess students and have a sense for what they know in their foundational skills. These lessons are, again, intended to be delivered during whole group instruction. These are not just for small groups of students or individual students. These lessons are designed to be delivered during that whole group instruction. And the lessons are designed to provide direct instruction in 3 key areas. Advanced spelling patterns, so those more irregular spelling patterns that are not taught in grades K through 2, uncommon spelling patterns, grammar, and morphology. And morphology instruction is very, very important because it supports students in several ways. It supports students in basic decoding, right? As they learn about word parts, it supports their decoding skills, but it also supports them in gaining meaning from unknown words. So as they learn the meaning of prefixes and suffixes and root words, they're able to make sense of unfamiliar words, and that supports their reading comprehension as well. Now, it's very important that we note these lessons do not replace, but instead they complement existing reading programs. So we're not saying this is a new reading program and you can forget about your old reading program. It's very important that you understand that this is in addition to, this complements whatever existing reading program you're using. So if you're using the guidebook, if you're using Wit and Wisdom, this is a complement. This enhances that work by adding that foundational skills piece. Now, each lesson is organized in exactly the same way. It begins with an attention getter, a way to get students excited about the lessons, ready to learn. It provides explicit instruction. We know that based on the science of reading, students need systematic, explicit instruction in these skills, and each of these lessons is going to provide that explicit instruction. It also provides an opportunity for guided practice for the teacher to support the students as they practice these newly acquired skills. And then there's also an opportunity for student application. So each lesson has a corresponding activity page in a student activity book where students are able to apply their learning. And this also serves as a formative assessment for teachers. It allows teachers to look at student work, analyze whether or not the students mastered the skill taught during that day, and then perhaps provide support on that skill to students the next day. Each of our lessons are organized in that way, very, very consistently, so that our students know what to expect and their focus stays on the new skill that they're learning instead of what's happening in the lesson. We also have several additional supports associated with each lesson. The first one is very important. This is an overview of the skill or concept being taught, and this is for the teacher. A great curriculum is not only going to support the learning of the students, but it's also going to support the learning of the teacher. And we kept that at the forefront while we developed these lessons. We also know that our 3rd through 5th grade teachers don't often see themselves as teachers of foundational skills. This may be new learning for them. They may not know what a diphthong is or a schwa is. And we want our teachers to feel very knowledgeable as they present this content to the students. So there's an overview of the skill or the concept for the teacher in each lesson, so that she feels confident or he feels confident in the information that they're presenting to their students. We also have included in every single lesson supports for diverse learners. How can you adapt the lesson, or how can you provide appropriate supports to meet the needs of our diverse learners? And I will say that we're going to continue to expand this section of our units, and we will update those as we have additional material to put in that. But both of those are included in every lesson in the unit. Now, this is an example of the one of our lessons in our teacher guide. Okay, you can see that it begins by identifying the lesson type. So the lesson is either going to focus on grammar, spelling, or morphology. That will be listed there. We provide an overview of the skill or the concept. Again, that's for the teacher, so that the teacher can grow their understanding of the content, the materials needed. And it's very important to explain that we, in designing this, we wanted to make this very teacher friendly as well. So the materials needed are going to be minimal. We don't want teachers feeling like, now I have to go cut out 75 cards for this particular lesson. We want our teachers to recognize, that this work does not have to be complicated or fancy. Sometimes just a simple whiteboard or some index cards may be all that you need. So you're going to see that the materials needed are very, very minimal, things that the teachers already have in their classrooms. We have a students will be able to statement, an outcome statement for each lesson, so that the teacher has a sense of what the student should be able to do after this lesson, a way for them to measure whether or not the students achieved mastery. You can see a description of our attention getter right here. Sometimes this will be a fun little joke or a game or something to just kind of get the students excited and revved up for the lesson. Then we move into our explicit instruction. And you can see based on the suggested time here that these are very, very brief. They're not designed to take 20, 30 minutes. Very, very brief. The focus is narrow, and so the teachers are able to just kind of keep this work very, very brief, because we know that they don't have tons of extra time in their day. We have guided practice as well, detailed instructions for how the teacher can guide the students through this learning. And then we have student application. So as I mentioned, with every unit, you'll have a teacher's guide, and you'll also have a student activity book. Each lesson has a corresponding student activity page. Now, As a teacher or as a district, you can choose to print out the entire activity book for all of your students, or teachers can select the pages that are most appropriate or whatever they might need for their students. But each lesson is going to have that corresponding activity page for the students. And again, this is very brief. These lessons are designed to last no longer than 10 to 15 minutes. And they were written to maintain that. We also have here at the end that guidance for diverse learners embedded in each lesson. So suggestions for how you can meet the needs of diverse learners. These are some examples of the student activity pages. So this is a spelling lesson. And you can see what will happen is the teacher will call out words containing the different spelling patterns for the sound. Then the students are going to spell the words and then sort the words according to the spelling pattern. So here you can see is spelled PH, GH, F, and FF. After teaching the students the different rules, they're going to have an opportunity to practice applying those spelling rules by sorting the words as the teacher calls them out. And again, this is a great formative assessment for the teacher. It gives the teacher insight into whether or not the student is able to apply those spelling patterns. And these are very important skills for students to have, not just for their reading, because obviously that's very, very important, but their writing. As students learn these spelling patterns and when you use particular spelling patterns, we know that their spelling is going to be improved, and that's going to be reflected in their writing. So these are very important skills. And this is an example of a spelling lesson. What you will notice is in grade 3, we have a lot of spelling lessons. Grade 3 is heavy on the spelling patterns, teaching the spelling patterns. As we move into grades 4 and 5, they become heavier in grammar and morphology, although there are spelling, grammar, and morphology in each of the grade levels. This is an example of a morphology lesson. So you can see that in this lesson, the teacher has provided instruction on the prefixes un, non, and n, or un, non, and n. And then the student has an opportunity to figure out what prefix would make sense in the sentence. So they have to have an understanding of what the prefixes mean and where it would make sense in the sentence. So this is an example of an activity page for a morphology lesson. And then lastly, we have an example of an activity page from a grammar lesson. So students here are learning about prepositional phrases. And so then they have to be able to complete the sentence based on the correct preposition. And then they're circling the prepositional phrase. And so you can see they're simple, they're focused, but they're impactful. The student will have a sense for this content, and then the next day it will build to something new. Okay, so that is our fire kit that we've talked about. Our fire kit is for all students. It's that foundational skills instruction that all students in grades 3 through 5 need. Now, it's also very important to recognize that many of our students are entering grade 3 with significant gaps in foundational skills. And so we find that, now more than ever, our students are entering 3rd grade with huge gaps. We have, as a result of the pandemic, as a result of the, learning loss from schools being out due to hurricanes. And we know that they need explicit instruction in these areas if they're going to be able to read fluently, if they're going to be able to make sense of the of what they're reading. And they're not just going to magically get this content. They're not just going to magically learn that OI says oi. They need that support. But as I mentioned earlier, many of our 3rd through 5th grade teachers, or our middle school teachers, or often even our high school teachers, don't know what to do when a student arrives in their classroom with major gaps in foundational skills. They've not thought of themselves as teachers of reading foundations. They've kind of focused on the content that they teach and struggle to understand maybe why that content was difficult. But very often the issue is foundations, and teachers need to be able to diagnose where the gaps are and fill those gaps. The tool that I'm about to talk to you today is going to support teachers in doing that work. So the Literacy Intervention and Foundational Tools Kit, the LIFT kit, helps teachers pinpoint specific gaps in foundational skills for students beyond grade 2. So this is not for students in grades K through 2. This is for any student in grades 3 or beyond who may have gaps in foundational skills. This kit includes fluency passages. It includes a code knowledge inventory, a phonological awareness screener, intervention activities targeted to specific skill needs of students, and student recording trackers. And all of these resources are housed in the LIFT library. And before we move on, I want teachers to understand, and I want our leaders to understand, that this program is going to help you pinpoint those gaps. You will begin by administering a fluency assessment. And a fluency assessment is a powerful diagnostic tool for foundational skills, because we know that the goal of foundational skills is to create truly fluent readers. We know that the goal of our ELA instruction is to create students who can comprehend in a very deep way and respond to what they read in a very deep way. But the goal of foundational skills is to truly create fluent readers. And your fluency passage is going to give you that information. In this fluency passage, the teacher will listen to students read, and then they will be able to compare their words correct per minute, their reading, to national norms. And they're going to be able to determine whether or not that child has gaps in foundational skills. Because typically speaking, any student who is reading below the 50th percentile on national norms is a student who needs additional support. But the question then is, what do you do if the student is reading below the 50th percentile? Well, you have to know what they know and what they don't know. Where are those gaps? This LIFT kit is going to provide you with a code knowledge inventory. Which is an assessment where you can diagnose which particular parts of the code, or all of the different spelling patterns that students learn in grades K through 2, the student does not have. It's very important to know, does the student not know how to decode basic CVC words? Do they not know how to decode words with diphthongs? This code knowledge inventory is going to provide you with that. For students who have significant gaps in code knowledge, then you're going to progress to a phonological awareness screener. This is going to help you determine if the student is able to hear and manipulate sounds and words. This is going to give you an understanding of where those gaps are in students' learning. After you do this diagnostic assessment, you are going to be able to provide interventions based on their specific need. And this is where the game will change. Once you know what exactly a student doesn't know, and you target your intervention to that specific need, you are going to see growth, and you are going to see it quickly. What's great about the LIFT kit is, in addition to that diagnostic piece, we have developed a library of resources, of over 80 resources that are designed to support teachers in supporting students specifically where that gap is. And you can access all of these resources in our LIFT library. Each of these activities, again, like our FIRE kit, provides an overview of the skill. If you're a third grade teacher and you've never heard of a diphthong, you're going to be able to read that overview and have a sense for what that is. So you're not going to be teaching blindly. You're going to have an understanding of what that means before you present that content to your students. We also have very simple and focused activities that you can use that are based on the specific needs of your students. These activities are designed to be very, very brief, sometimes just 3 to 5 minutes, and they are very, very focused. In addition to these activity suggestions, we have student recording trackers included with each of these activities so that you can monitor student learning over time. Now, what we do know about how students learn to read is that they need that systematic, explicit instruction in this content. For many students, they might need only 3 to 4 applications and, opportunities to practice the spelling pattern. But for our struggling readers, they might need 10 or 20 opportunities to practice that. Our dyslexic students may need over 100 opportunities to practice these spelling patterns before they're imprinted on their brain in a way that allows them to read fluently. These trackers are going to allow you to monitor that, and these activities are going to support you in providing that truly targeted instruction that your students need. And all of these resources are housed right there in the LIFT library. And we have a link here in this deck, but you can also access it through our Louisiana literacy page. Now, just to kind of ease your mind, the LIFT kit is not for all students. It's very important to understand that. The FIRE kit is for all students. The LIFT kit is only for students who need additional support, students who have gaps in foundational skills. Embedded in our teacher administration guide is a flowchart that explains when you would complete these different parts of this diagnostic assessment. So the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to administer your universal screener if you're a 3rd grade teacher, or if you're in 4th grade or beyond, you'll examine your LEAP test results. For students who are not at benchmark or on the screener, or who are not proficient with the LEAP test, then you're going to follow this flow chart. Students who are proficient on LEAP, or students who are at benchmark on the screener, you just kind of watch those students. But anybody that is not quite there, what you're going to do is you're going to administer a fluency assessment, either Quest for the Best or the French Quarter. Those are embedded in the teacher administration guide. And like I said, you're going to analyze their reading to determine if they're at the 50th percentile. And all of this information is explained in detail in the teacher administration guide. Any student who's not reading at the 50th percentile, you will do the code knowledge inventory, and then possibly even the phonological and phonemic awareness screener. And all of this is laid out very, very in a very detailed way in the teacher administration guide. But this is not for all students. This is an example of our code knowledge inventory. You can see we begin with very basic CVC words, often the things that we begin teaching in grade K. As we field tested this, we were floored to find that many students were getting hung up decoding basic CVC words. And so you're going to find that many of your students are going to be hung up in these very basic skills. The code knowledge inventory moves from least complex spelling patterns to more complex spelling patterns, ending with some multisyllabic words. As you listen to students read, you're wanting these students to be able to read these words automatically by sight. We don't want them sounding these words out. If they're sounding these words out, that's an indication that these words have not been what we often call orthographically mapped. They've not been imprinted in their brain, and so they need additional practice with these words. It's very important that they have that opportunity to sound out words, but if you're listening to them read this code knowledge inventory and they're sounding the words out, you know you need to stop there, and that's where you need to focus your work. You'll listen to the students read, you'll make notes about where their gaps are, and then you go to the LIFT library to get intervention resources specifically for those gaps. So if you have a student who simply cannot read words with vowel digraphs, you're going to provide them with support in reading words with vowel digraphs. Very important because it is very, very focused. No longer are we just bringing kids to our small group table and working with them on kind of general blanket skills. Instead, we're going to really target the need. This is very important to make that quick and that rapid growth. You may have 3 students in your class who need support with CVC words. You can pull those students together at your small group, but you may have 1 student in your class who needs support with R-controlled vowels. You're going to pull that student for a short moment and work on R-controlled vowels with that student. But instead of having general lessons, you're truly targeting the need. Now, this is an example of one of our LIFT activities. So you can see here we have a rationale. We have a focus. So the focus here is decoding words with diphthongs. Again, a list of the materials that teachers may need. And these are going to be very, very simple. Nothing fancy, because we know our teachers don't have time to cut out 80 things after the end of the day. We want them to keep the work focused on what the student needs, and this work does not have to be fancy. A description of the activity, word lists, and that recording sheet right there at the end for the teachers to monitor student progress on this particular skill. And as I mentioned before, students are going to need continued practice with these skills. If a student cannot read words containing particular spelling patterns, the way that they're going to learn to read words with those particular spelling patterns is continued practice. This may not happen in a day, this may happen over time, but teachers can stay the course, and these recording sheets will help them see the progress that the students are making. We also have these word lists embedded in the activity, so teachers don't have to search for words containing these spelling patterns, which can be very time consuming for teachers. So this is a sample activity that you might get through the LIFT kit. Okay. All of these things are available in our literacy library. If you go into the literacy library, you can scroll down. The brain holding the weights is your key. That is our LIFT kit, because we are lifting our students. And our fire kit is shown here with our sun, because we are going to ensure that our students are on fire with their foundational skills instruction. All of these things are available here in the literacy library. For fire kit, we have released unit 1 of the student activity book and the teacher's guide. Units 2 and 3 for each grade level will be released this fall. So stay tuned for that. We also have some opportunities for professional growth. We have some upcoming live webinars. One that we're really excited about is a webinar for paraprofessionals and support staff. How can they support students in work that's aligned to the science of reading? So if you have paraprofessionals in your school or in your district, definitely encourage them to join us for that. We also have a grades 3 through 12 foundational skills and content literacy PD series that we will be releasing soon. All of these webinars will be recorded and posted in the literacy library. So if you're not able to make them, definitely look for them in the literacy library. But we encourage you to join us live. It's an opportunity for you to hear the information firsthand and ask any questions that you may have. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Chasson.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for sharing these incredible resources with everyone on the call today. I'm so excited to see that we have nearly 500 people on our webinar this morning, which is really, really exciting. And I want to have you all leave today with a call to action, but I want to mention as well that I will be answering. We've gotten some really, really great questions in the chat today. And so I will be answering those questions in just a few minutes. But I really wanted to just ask you all to think about the following things. This is our call to action slide. When you leave today, I said earlier in today's webinar that I wanted you all to leave our quick webinar this morning really feeling both inspired and empowered to best serve our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. So the first is staffing and scheduling. We know that this is difficult now more than ever. Lots of folks across the state are experiencing difficulty with staffing. We know recruitment and retention can be an issue. And so that's why we're really trying to be creative, think outside the box in how we do those schedules. And which is why we're even providing our paraprofessional webinar series. How can you best utilize your paraprofessionals to serve students? So making sure that you all have time in your schedules for things like interventions. And so how is that built into your schedule? Maybe even getting creative in serving students in those few minutes before instruction begins, when they're walking in and doing their bell work, right before the bell rings in the morning, right at the end of the day as your students are packing up. What are those times that you can pull students for that individual 3-minute, 4-minute intervention that Sarah just went over with the lift kit for our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students? How are you best utilizing everyone on your staff to help do that? Small group instruction, how is it built into that schedule of the day so that teachers can identify the needs either for individual children or grouping them together if those needs are similar, and building that into the school day. Also, so important, this work is heavy and it is hard. And so our teachers need each other now more than ever. So making sure that there's that conducive grouping during some job embedded weekly teacher collaboration time for teachers to come together and talk about best practices in literacy instruction, how they're using these resources, and how they are best going to serve the individual needs of their students. You heard a lot today about the lift kit and how it is most effective and impactful for our struggling readers because it is truly individualized instruction. Like Sarah said, it doesn't have to be complicated or fancy, and our lift kit is not. It's not complicated or fancy. It's just a really great way to meet the individual needs of students. And so teachers need each other to learn how to do that work to the best of their ability to serve our students. The next thing is instructional leadership teams. So how are you at the school level supporting each other and supporting your teachers in their Act 108 training? Again, if you have kindergarten through 3rd grade on your campus, you all are undergoing that Act 108 training and your teachers are undergoing it. And so how are you supporting each other? How are you being motivated and collaborative around that training? This training will have such an impact for our state. It will give our leaders and teachers the why behind the science of reading. Why does it work? How does it teach kids how to read? So the materials that you've seen today will give you the what and the how, but that Act 108 training really builds in us as leaders and teachers that why behind the materials. Why do they work? Why are they effective? Why do we need to use them? So it's super important to complete that Act 108 training. How are you utilizing your instructional leadership team structures to promote literacy best practices in the classroom and engage in that observation and feedback to really encourage those best practices? And then really just make yourself and your teachers aware of our literacy library and all of our available resources. What you saw today was a snapshot of FIRE for that whole group instruction as a supplement on foundational skills for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And you saw LIFT, which is very intentional, explicit, systematic instruction for our struggling readers 3rd grade and above. Very individualized support for them. But we have lots of other resources in our literacy library that we want you all to go ahead and make yourselves familiar with, have your teachers become familiarized with them as well. Also continue to promote and support high quality instructional material usage. And again, that why opens up as you engage in that Act 108 training. High quality instructional materials make more sense as you learn the why behind the science of reading, which comes from that Act 108 training. And then just always realizing that materials are meant to be adjusted based on student need. They are not a script. And so they are meant to be multi-sensory for our students, focused on content and purpose, and really individualized based on what our students need. We teach students, not curriculum. And so even with these materials here today, we are using those materials to best meet the needs of our students. So with that, I will take a look at some of the questions because we've had some really great questions come in that I wanted to make sure that I answered. Someone was looking for some clarity around the FIRE materials. They were seeing the student materials, but not the teacher's guide. So just to make you aware that for FIRE, for each grade level, there is a teacher's guide with instructions. And so you see that broken out by 3rd, 4th, and 5th for FIRE. And if you all take a look on our literacy library, you scroll down to the FIRE graphic. And so those materials are separated by the teacher's guide and then the student resources per grade level. We also had a question about who should use FIRE. It is meant for 3rd, 4th, and 5th. It is meant to be a foundational skills program that is a supplement on top of your high quality instructional materials that you are already using. Someone had a specific question that they were using foundations. And so foundations is already a foundational skills program, but it goes up through 3rd. So fire may be a good idea for 4th and 5th. The resources are separated out by grade level. So if you have something that you're already using that you find successful for some of those grade levels, but not for others, you may want to use fire for any resources that you don't currently have. We've also had some questions about the deck and this webinar that is being recorded. It will be available in our literacy library by the end of this week. And then a great question about, is there a lift kit version for kindergarten through 2nd grade? So these materials were really developed to address the need for foundational skills beyond grade 2. Just knowing that we have always had students who struggle to read beyond grade 2, especially now in light of the last several years. And so what are we doing to fill those gaps for those struggling readers? And so for kindergarten through 2nd grade, we really want to encourage you to use your high quality instructional materials for kindergarten through 2nd grade, because everything that you need is built into that curriculum, built into those materials for K through 2. We had a question, is it a different fluency assessment than what is required by our literacy screener? And this was specifically about the LIFT, the assessment built into the LIFT kit. So this fluency assessment would be given after your universal screening and after that LEAP data analysis. So it doesn't take the place of any universal screening components. And as you all dig into that LIFT kit, you'll see that they're really short, very concise assessments at the beginning of that LIFT kit to really help you diagnose where that child is falling within their foundational knowledge. And so it does not replace the universal screener. It's meant to fall afterwards. We have a really great flow chart that you all can use for this. And it tells you if your student is scoring below level on that universal screener, that's when the LIFT kit really kicks in. And that's when you would administer that first assessment of the LIFT kit to help you try to dig in more to diagnose. So that's what it's meant for. There's a really great flow chart in the LIFT kit administration manual that will help you do that. So it's not meant to replace the universal screener, but to come afterwards for our students who you're seeing on that universal screener are struggling and then falling below level. Okay, we had a question about a nonsense word inventory. Nonsense word fluency is available through the universal screener. So no matter which one you are selecting of those 4 available universal screeners, nonsense word fluency is within those. So we would encourage you to use that to assess that skill as needed. And we had a question about, is this required to implement this program? No, these are optional resources. But we love them. We feel very strongly that they will make a difference for students in our state. And so we want to encourage you to use them. And they're free. They're free. They're available on our website for everyone to use. And they're meant to fill a need. We made them because we saw that need. It took us over a year to build these materials, but we saw that need and we heard it from lots of folks out in the field. And so we created them ourselves. So these are optional to be used as you all need and want, but we want to strongly encourage it because we know that they'll make a difference for our kids. And so just to reiterate, LIFT, the LIFT kit is for students in need of interventions who have shown reading deficits. FIRE is useful for all students during whole group instruction. It's just meant to be, I've been calling it a mini lesson, a 10-minute foundational skills mini lesson built into your day as part of your core instruction. That is FIRE. LIFT is meant for that individual or small group intervention for the students who need it. So with that, I think that brings us to the end of our questions for today. But just a reminder that today's recording and presentation will be posted in our literacy library. And so if you all have teachers at your schools, or colleagues, or friends who you want to share this with, you can feel free to do so. Go ahead and dive into all of the resources, find out more about what in there can help you to best serve our students. I want to thank you all for being on with us today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for all of the work that you do with our children every day. You all have a great rest of your day.